Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. I hear a lot of people talking about waiting for the crash or the correction to buy their property because prices are so high. And I've done some videos on, yes, prices are high, but interest rates are half what they were 3 years ago, and rents are about double what they were 3 years ago. So for me, it still makes sense to be buying properties. But I have Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time, who've been investing for, I want to say decades, and pluralize that. And there have been times where Michael Zuber's pivoted. He went from single family to large multifamily, and he knew when to do that because he studies his numbers. So I want to ask both of you, sometimes it makes sense to build, and sometimes it makes sense to buy. I have a triplex that is zoned for a 4-unit, and someday I'm going to add a 4th unit.
But not today.
Because of my super lazy. But to you guys, it's made sense sometimes to buy and build. So Mike, if you could tell me, what would you look at when you were trying to figure out, does it make more sense to build a property or buy a property?
Well, I'm right there, at least in my market this year, given the dearth or lack of inventory, the returns that are there because people are overpaying both for houses and multifamily. I will likely build more units today, mainly of the ADU variety or mother-in-law, separate structures this year than I've ever built before. I'm waiting to hear on final approval on my first one probably next week. So why? Frankly, because it's a better use of capital. For me, it's all the same spreadsheet. My course, How to Get Started One Rental at a Time, one spreadsheet, one yield calculation. It's very simple math to me. I try to remove emotion as much as possible. I'm not attracted by saying, "Oh, look, I got a 20 unit or 100 unit deal." It doesn't matter to me. I want to know how my money is working the hardest, and that means the largest return. So right now in my market, building, it seems to be better. You have to build smartly. You have to build with standard sizes because you don't want to do custom windows and custom stuff today, given the backlogs. So yeah, as long as you're buying Home Depot and Lowe's kind of windows and doors and things of that nature, and not overbuilding for size, because again, ADUs, like for example, again, I'm such an open book. I've actually brought my architect on my channel, and I actually made a mistake, right? So I have a lot that's perfect for it. I can build up to 1,250 square feet. That's the maximum size, or maybe it's 1,200 anyways. So we did that and I priced it out. It would be a poor use of capital because once I get it built and square foot and all that, because rent, right? Rent's not a square foot number, as we've talked about a lot of times. But you know what? If I build a 650 or maybe 680 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 1.5 probably, I get a great return. You know, the size is 50%. The rent is maybe 20% off. So much better return. So by the way, this is the first time in 21 years where it is clearly, assuming you own the land, there is obviously that caveat where building makes more sense for me today. And I would not have said that any other year.
I really like how you clarified that sometimes a smaller square foot place can actually be a better return because people are thinking the bigger it is, the more, if it has that 3rd bedroom, I'll get more rents. Right. But compared to the price to build that, is the return bigger or smaller? And when you have a tenant flip, you've said this on one of your videos that I've seen before, absolutely, that's more paint, more flooring, more things to fix. So look at the whole picture to figure out which is the best one to build. And since I do have that triplex that I could add a 4th one to, that's probably something I wouldn't have considered if I didn't watch your content. Yeah. I'm going to run the numbers and look at the rents for 2 or 3 bedroom and figure out which one has the best.
Yeah, I'll give you rough numbers. So a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath house, right? Not attached, own yard, own parking area, own stuff. We'll probably rent for $1,100 in this area. A 3-2, twice the size, $1,350, maybe $1,400. I would have to pay double, a little bit like 110% more to build that bigger structure. And the rent's up 25%.
Yeah.
No way. No chance. I'm building the 650, very likely 660. I think.
They would have to do the math here too. So 2 bedrooms in my area go for 15 and 3 bedrooms go for 22. So there's a $700. It's
a 50% difference, but it's going to cost you twice as much to build.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
definitely going to have to run the numbers on that. So Matt,
Yeah.
what do you look at when you're deciding, do I build or do I buy?
So the toughest thing in my market is that because it's such an old market, so we're in one of the oldest cities in the country, 1673, I think is when it was founded.
Jeez.
Yeah. So you should see some of the pictures that we have archived from like 200 years ago. They're saddle trails, so it's so the toughest thing for us is land. Land is the toughest thing for us. The conservationists want to preserve the rest of the land that we have. So dirt here is very, very expensive. So to Mike's point, I've been looking over the last year, 18 months, all of the properties I already have, but also other properties in parts of the city where I've seen an ADU added or where I've seen, developers strip something off. I was hugely bummed when I saw a deal that I looked at. It was 7 one-bedroom units in a building. And I was like, you know what? Oh, $595 is just too much. I'd pay $795 for it now. But worse than that was the guy who looked at it, saw what the zoning was. He had 4 condos behind it that he built for $225 a piece that recently sold for $350 a piece.
Ooh.
Like, he crushed it. And so for me, the balance always is, just like Mike, it's use of capital. I think where I'm actually looking is I'm trying to take it next level, which is not building stick build, but actually building 3D print. That's what I've been looking at for about the last 8 or 9 months and researching. I'm probably within 90 or 120 days of buying a machine.
Wow.
And going down that route, because I think that's going to be the future. Is I can then build 600 square foot units for a fraction of the cost over a stick build. And more importantly, I can do it in a fraction of the time, and time is money.
Nice. I want to say that's almost a unique approach. So not only when does it make sense to build, but what strategy do you use for your build?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you need to understand your market.
100%.
If you're in an area like California where they pretty much come out and say, or in Hawaii, we encourage ADUs. We're speeding up the permit process. We're trying to handle our housing crisis. Or if you're in an area where people say, we're going to conserve this land, or there's some areas here in Washington that are historical.
Yeah.
And so it's in my search with my agents that I don't want anything in that area.
Yeah. I'm not going there.
Not going there. Right. I don't want to deal with those restrictions or those rules. So knowing your market, knowing your area, and running the numbers to figure out what makes the most sense for you, because there is a little bit of a difference with purchasing a property and a build when you look at the chronology. How long is the permit process, the plans process to get it approved with the city? How long does the build actually take? Versus this structure is in place. I know what the current rents are. I know what the rents will be in 2 or 3 months when I use the binder strategy. One last question, and Mike, we'll start with you. Would you suggest buying or building for somebody who is just starting out?
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to come to that answer no matter what you asked me. This is not a strategy that I would recommend for anybody that's not got. You have to be able to carry it, because what am I learning, right? I decided to do ADUs. ADUs became a thing big in California January 1st of 2020, I think. And it's just a whole process and a deal. I started this process. I did a video on late August. I still don't have approval. I'm hoping to get it next week. But this is not something that a new person should do. Don't go look for vacant land and think you're going to build something there, right? That could be a strategy if you have a big portfolio. But this is not something, if you already have a full-time job, it's out of state or out of area. I have great relationships, and I'm sure I'm going to be surprised. I will be documenting the process as we go through it on the channel, both the good and the bad. And I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't. If I still had a full-time job, I wouldn't do this. There's no way.
Okay. I'm glad you put it that way. I have a couple of other strategies that I feel almost exactly the same about. Matt, what's your opinion? Starting out, have a portfolio. When do you think it makes the most sense to build?
Well, I am 21 years in and I have built 0. So I have, at best, I've only done, and it's for me, it's, I look at the cost to build versus what my cost to acquire is. And so as I look at it in my market, you've got 1,500 square foot, single family, 3-bed, 2-bath homes that are selling at $335 a foot, square foot. Even if I'm and I don't think that I'm so arrogant as to be that much better than a builder, right? This guy does this for a living. He's knocking out of the park. He probably doesn't suck. And his stuff is selling. So let's just say I can do it for $250 a foot. Doesn't matter. I'm buying at 190 or 180 or 175. So I'm buying that. So what I have to do is, my math is, if I'm able to buy at 175 a foot, what can I build or do for 175 a foot? And that's what instantly took me out of traditional build. That's why I had to start looking at a solution like 3D printing, was because for the cost per foot, it was much less expensive. And that was based on time and based on, there's a massive initial investment. That said, you are starting at least $750,000 to buy one of the machines that you're going to need.
Wow.
And so all the towns want it, but none of them are willing to approve it.
Yes.
So we're just walking that line. And I actually did a project that was on the water. It took me 9 months to get a denial after I spent $11,000 on surveying and permits and everything else.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That was awesome.
Yeah, a couple of things, right? So another thing I did on my channel is I took this ADU idea, another big lot I own. I tried to build 8 homes. I think I spent $8,000 and had to pull out because they wanted a $100,000 commitment up front with no guarantee. I'm like, no, not going to happen.
I don't know you well enough to bet
Yeah.
$100,000 on you.
No. Yeah, I could write that check. I am not writing that check.
The reason that you wouldn't write that check is because you can write that check.
Exactly. And the last thing I want to say to people out there that maybe you're looking at a lot, maybe it has a house on it, it'll cash flow today. What does that extra square foot mean? Because when I bought the house and I'm adding an ADU today, I bought it knowing I would put an ADU on it someday. So that has value. I didn't give it much value. I think I was willing to spend an extra $5,000 for it. So don't get confused. Don't go, because again, a realtor is going to come to you and say, hey, look at this old house, 1950s. Look at that backyard. This is California. You can get an ADU there, which is probably correct. But don't overpay for that future, right? Maybe a whisker, but it's got to cash flow today. Don't you dare buy an alligator because of some ADU, pipe dream. Be careful. Be careful.
Agreed.
Well, there's 2 strategies that a lot of people watch videos where somebody says, it's my first deal and I built a duplex. It's my first deal and I did the BRRRR strategy. And I recycled my capital on my first deal. It's very easy to make some mistakes on what the after repair value is going to be, what the timeline is going to be, what's going to happen to material costs. One of the biggest mistakes that happens with adding an ADU or doing the BRRRR method is if you look in your area at a house with an ADU and it's for sale on the MLS and somebody's buying it, it will appraise pretty close to that purchase value because the appraisers have a human being right now that day saying, I want to spend this much money on this property. When you have a house and you do a BRRRR method or you add an ADU and then you go to refinance to pull your money out, there is no human being standing there that day saying, I want to spend this amount of money on that property. So what appraisers do, and an appraiser taught me this, is when you're looking at something that's been BRRR'd or had square footage added like an ADU, they go off of appraisals from 6 months ago. So if there's been rapid appreciation in your area, you might run into lending issues. So I agree with Mike 100% and Matt. BRRRR and adding an ADU or building is probably not the strategy to start with. Once you are there, I've been doing this a little over 10 years. Matt's a little over 20. We haven't built yet. Mike is the king of pivot and he's done what's made sense at the time. And I'm definitely learning from his content, but I'm not there yet. So if you're just starting out, I think even in a competitive market, most times, because of timeline and permits and all of the other things to consider, buying makes more sense. If somebody wants to reach out with actual questions, Mike, how can they get a hold of you?
One rental at a time, website, YouTube, books, all that, Instagram, all that stuff.
And Matt, if they want to get a hold of you.
Lumberjack Landlord on YouTube and at Lumberjack Landlord on Instagram. We've started posting something every single day. Joyous content for the masses or 200 people.
200 people. Nice. I actually logged into Instagram the other day for the first time in months. It's just not a platform that I'm on much. I will be someday.
But not today.
Not today.
But not today.
I love that.
Thank you both for coming on here. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.